the reason why my aunt feels the way they feel about Bernie is because there has to be some disconnect.
Nobody knows.
The reason
how your aunt feels about Bernie.
I've told you guys before that they was for Hillary, period, point blank, and they were for Hillary in 2016. And they're saying without even knowing anything at all that they're going to be for whoever's running against Bernie Sanders in the primary. And I'm like, really? And they just have a chip on their shoulder. They, for some reason, they just, I don't know. But I think in part that loyalty is a huge thing. I think loyalty is a big thing with the black community because for the majority of our time in this country, all we didn't have, it was all about our word was as good as a character reference as we can get because we didn't have money, we didn't have anything like that people measured who a person was on. It was all about our character and our loyalty, and it meant something to dance with the one that brought you to the party, so to speak. So it means something to older people to continue to have an allegiance to a particular group of people that you feel brought you to the party. Obviously, there's exceptions, Barack being one of them, but initially they were in favor of Hillary until they got to know who Barack Obama was.
Even though Hillary and Bill kind of took you to the party and then threw you off the dance floor.
But see, and obviously that wasn't even really understood because the majority of black people, and also you have to take into consideration manipulation as well. Black people don't want crime in their communities as well. So don't get it twisted you had a majority of black people during that time that was for this criminal act, the thing that Biden drafted. And it was because for the large part, they felt like they were living in a police state. They felt there were no resources, so people were forced to sell drugs or rob. The majority of crimes that are committed are economic crimes to get more money. And so they're like, okay, I don't want to have to worry about, my kid dying walking outside to the park, which was a real reality to a lot of older black people. So they were in favor. They didn't understand, first off, that they were in that environment due to the policies that targeted black people, that gave black people less resources that white people had. And there was a whole lot of things that brought us to a breaking point where it made sense to sell drugs, where it made sense to want to join a gang. It made sense to rob because survival was at hand. So instead of taking all that into consideration, we're taking to my mother wants me to live. So, yes, pass this criminal act so then my kids can live. Fast forward, we understand now, we have more information about what that meant and what it did in years following. So, I don't want it to just seem as if Democrats and even black people for that matter in that moment wasn't for it, but they were for it because they had a lack of information. And Democrats were for it because they were more concerned about their political careers. They weren't concerned about, because if they were concerned about it, they would have been more, because they knew where it came from and they knew what would happen. But they manipulated the ignorance of the community that didn't know. The only thing they knew is that they didn't want to have to worry about their child walking down the street and being shot. You know what I'm saying? So that was a real worry for older black parents, my mother being one of them. Even though, me being a part of that gang activity, being in jail, like it was still a worry, until I got old enough where I didn't listen anymore. I had to be in the house before the street lights came on because we knew that a lot of stuff happened after dark in Compton. So when the street lights came on, I had to be at home until I got old enough to say no, and I just didn't listen. But that's a real concern, and it's been a real concern. And I would say that it has been a real concern for a lot of and remains to be in certain areas a real concern that they feel like they're not getting the resources. So you're putting people in a predicament where they're forced to do these crimes. There's no resources, no organizations, nothing that's putting money in these communities. Guess what? They're like, yes, I want to walk down the street without worrying about dying. So then they go for bills that will at some point be not in their best interest in the long run. It won't even be in their child's best interest, because then their kid that they're trying to keep alive will be targeted and then end up being put in jail or being in a criminal system just because he's suspected of being a suspect. And that goes to a system of oppression, the system of over incarceration that happens, and it all has to do with a lot to do with perception, right?
Right.
So I went into that rant, but I was saying is like, yeah, they voted against it and they went against their own interests, but just understand that the perception was that the Clintons were looking out for them. You know what I mean? Think about it. They said that Clinton was the first black president. Even though that was a running joke, they meant that because it seemed like he took the time to address the black community. Even though he didn't come to the Million Man March. I was in jail at the time, but I knew it happened. Even though he went against Farrakhan, but at least Farrakhan got 1 million men to come together in peace. He didn't support it. He didn't even speak on it. He had like a dinner the same day. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole lot of things he didn't address. And obviously now that we know, that criminal bill wasn't actually something that he cared about. It only became something that he cared about when he started to care more about, well, I guess we can argue that he's always cared more about his political career, but that was a Republican criminal bill that he enforced just so they can show that he was bipartisan and tilting more to the right.
And also welfare reform.
Yeah, real welfare reform as well.
That law was very, very catastrophic for
Exactly.
African Americans.